Deciding whether to sell your home selling step 2, understand your rough net proceeds. This step is about understanding your rough net proceeds, not to finalize a plan, but to see whether selling clears the first hurdle. Most sellers start by talking about what their home might sell for. That's the headline number. It's also the least useful one. The number that actually matters is what you have left after the transaction is finished. Net proceeds are not the sale price. Net proceeds are what remains after friction, and by that I mean the transaction costs that show up when you actually sell, and most of that friction arrives all at once. That's why this step exists. This step assumes you've already worked through whether selling makes sense at all. If credit, cash flow, and timing don't support the move, the math here is a warning, not an invitation. When people think about equity, they usually think in isolation. What did I pay? What do I owe? What might I sell for? Net proceeds force you to collapse all of that into one question. After everything else gets paid, what do I actually walk away with? Your single biggest selling expense will be real estate commissions, not repairs, not moving, not title fees. Commissions are usually the largest cost in the transaction, and they come straight off the top. Everything else stacks on top of that. Beyond commissions, sellers face several other categories of costs. Some are unavoidable, like title, escrow, recording, and prorations. Some are market driven, like inspection repairs, credits, or appraisal renegotiation. And some are easy to ignore early on, like pre listing repairs, moving costs, storage, or temporary housing. The problem isn't that these costs exist, it's that sellers tend to think about them one at a time while the transaction applies them all at once. That's where expectations break down. This is why net proceeds should be calculated early, not to be precise and not to lock anything in, but to see whether selling clears the first hurdle. Will the equity realistically turn into a down payment for the next home? Will it cover required or requested repairs? Will it leave you with any flexibility, or will it be spoken for before you get to the next step? There are tools that can help with this. Online calculators can give rough approximations. Title companies will often provide a preliminary net sheet at no cost, and those are usually the best estimates you can get before a transaction is underway. But even a title net sheet is only as good as the numbers that you put in. If your estimated sales price is optimistic, the net will be optimistic too. Every net sheet you create at this stage represents a best case outcome. It's a rough estimate meant to help you decide whether moving forward even makes sense. It assumes the home sells at your target price without meaningful concessions, surprises, or delays. That's not a flaw, that's the point. You are not creating a net sheet to predict the future. You are creating one to answer a single question: is there enough equity here to justify moving forward? I'm not going to walk through the math in this episode. Numbers are hard to follow in audio, and this step is too important to gloss over. The written guide shows how selling costs, equity, and timing interact, with examples you can slow down and review. That's where the detailed work belongs. What matters here is mindset. Net proceeds are not firm until closing and funding. Even when an offer is accepted, inspections, appraisal constraints, title issues, and financing issues can change the outcome. Until funds are dispersed, proceeds are hypothetical. This matters even more if you're selling and then buying together. If your next move depends on proceeds that haven't closed and funded, timing becomes risk. That risk needs to be acknowledged and planned around, not assumed away. There's also a question many sellers don't ask soon enough. If selling consumes most of your equity, where does the next down payment come from? Smaller down payments can mean higher payments, mortgage insurance, or worse pricing. That doesn't automatically stop a move, but it changes the trade-offs. This step exists to slow momentum long enough to do the math. Creating a net sheet doesn't commit you to selling. It gives you information. If the numbers don't work, that's not failure, that's a useful answer. If selling still makes sense after you understand your rough net proceeds, the next step is preparing the home properly, but only after the math supports the move. That's where we go next in home selling, step 3.